Stand in front of any bread aisle for more than 10 seconds, and you will feel it. The low-grade guilt of choosing between the soft white loaf and the darker, denser one that claims to be whole grain, multigrain, or 7-grain, as if any of those words meant the same thing. Most people grab one or the other based on habit, price, or how the crust looks, not because they actually know which one is doing anything for their body. So here is a question worth sitting with for a second. If you had to guess, how many years of your life do you think are riding on that one choice? Grains are not a niche food group you can take or leave. Around the world, cereals provide about 56% of all the energy people eat and half of their protein, more than any other single category of food. Every major dietary guideline on the planet puts grains at the base of the plate. And yet the actual difference between whole and refined comes down to something most people have never really thought about. A grain kernel has 3 parts. The bran, the tough outer shell packed with fiber and minerals like iron, magnesium, and zinc. The germ, the nutrient-dense embryo of the seed, full of antioxidants and vitamin E. And the endosperm, the starchy core that supplies most of the carbohydrate and calories. Refining a grain means stripping away the bran and the germ during milling, leaving behind mostly endosperm. That process is exactly why white flour feels softer and lasts longer on a shelf, and exactly why nutritionists have spent decades arguing it also leaves behind most of what made the grain worth eating in the first place. Here is where it gets confusing, though. Ask 5 different countries how much whole grain you should actually eat, and you will get 5 different answers. In the United States and Canada, the advice is that at least half of the grains you eat should be whole grains, which works out to roughly 3 servings a day. In Scandinavian countries, the bar is set much higher, around 8 servings a day. In the United Kingdom, the guidance is far vaguer. Choose whole grain, brown, or high fiber varieties wherever you can, with no actual number attached at all. If you have never known exactly how much whole grain you are supposed to eat, that is not a personal failure. Even national health agencies cannot agree. Part of the reason for that confusion is that, for a long time, nobody had done the kind of large, detailed analysis needed to say exactly how much whole grain is enough, and for which diseases it actually matters. Earlier research had already linked whole grains to a lower risk of type 2 diabetes, coronary heart disease, and weight gain. But whether whole grains lowered the risk of cancer specifically stayed murky, with some studies pointing one way and others finding nothing at all. And even among the studies that did find a heart benefit, researchers disagreed on something surprisingly basic. Does the benefit just keep climbing the more whole grain you eat? Or does it flatten out at some point, meaning that 4th or 5th serving is basically wasted? So why would something as simple as bran and germ move the needle on diseases as different as heart attacks, cancer, and infections? The leading explanation starts with fiber. Whole grains are much richer in fiber than their refined counterparts, and fiber slows down how fast your body absorbs sugar after a meal, which means smaller spikes in blood glucose and insulin. Over years, that steadier glycemic response is linked to a lower risk of obesity and type 2 diabetes, both of which are themselves major drivers of heart disease. But fiber does not stop working once it leaves your stomach. When it reaches your colon, gut bacteria ferment it into short-chain fatty acids, compounds that appear to directly inhibit how much cholesterol your liver produces. Higher whole grain intake has also been tied to lower blood pressure, lower triglycerides, and lower LDL, the so-called bad cholesterol, all classic cardiovascular risk factors. On the cancer side, fiber is thought to help in a more mechanical way. It adds bulk to stool, dilutes potential carcinogens, and speeds up transit time through the digestive tract. It even binds to excess estrogen, so it gets excreted rather than recirculated through the body. Whole grains have also been linked to lower levels of inflammatory markers and liver enzymes, both of which tend to run high in people with elevated risk of cardiovascular disease and cancer. Here is a question a lot of people never think to ask. If whole grains are this beneficial, why does almost nobody actually hit the recommended amount? Part of the answer might be marketing. Walk down that same bread aisle and you will see labels like multigrain, 7-grain, or made with whole wheat, which sound healthy but do not actually guarantee much. Depending on the country, a product can legally be called a whole grain food if whole grain makes up as little as a quarter of its total weight. That means you could eat a slice of bread that is 3/4 refined flour and still, technically, be eating a whole grain product. If you have ever grabbed a loaf assuming the label told you the whole story, you are far from alone. There is also the obvious objection lurking in the background. People who eat a lot of whole grains do not just differ from everyone else by their bread choice. They tend to exercise more, smoke less, and eat more fruits and vegetables overall. So how do you know whole grains themselves are doing anything, rather than just being a marker for a generally healthier lifestyle? That question has haunted this entire field of research for years, and it is exactly the kind of question that only a very large, very carefully designed analysis can start to answer. Which brings us to the reason we are talking about this today. Is there finally a real answer to all of this, backed by enough data to actually trust it? A team of researchers set out to build the most complete picture, yet of whole grains and health, pulling together data from every major cohort study on the topic they could find, spanning 3 continents and multiple decades of follow-up. They analyzed it all against coronary heart disease, stroke, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and death from nearly every major cause. What they found does not just confirm the old advice to eat more whole grains. It puts hard numbers on exactly how much and reveals some real surprises about which diseases the benefit does and does not extend to. The analysis combined 45 separate cohort studies, drawn from 64 published papers, following between 245,012 and 705,253 participants across Europe, the United States, and Asia. Inside that pool were 7,068 cases of coronary heart disease, 2,337 cases of stroke, 26,243 cases of cardiovascular disease, 34,346 cancer deaths, and 100,726 deaths from any cause. More data on this question than had ever been analyzed together before. The headline number is 90 grams a day, roughly 3 servings. The equivalent of 2 slices of whole grain bread plus a bowl of whole grain cereal, or a serving and a half of whole wheat pita. Eating that much whole grain, compared with eating very little or none, was linked to a 19% lower risk of coronary heart disease, a 22% lower risk of cardiovascular disease overall, and a smaller, statistically uncertain 12% dip in stroke risk. The pattern held for death too. A 17% lower risk of dying from any cause, 15% lower for cancer specifically, 22% lower for respiratory disease, and 26% lower for infectious disease, all tied to that same 90-gram daily habit. Not every result held up, and the researchers were upfront about that. For diabetes deaths, the numbers suggested an enormous 51% reduction, but with only 4 studies feeding into that estimate, the confidence interval was too wide to call it solid. For deaths linked to neurological disease, based on just 2 studies, there was no clear pattern at all, if anything trending in the wrong direction. Those are exactly the kind of honest, unresolved findings that get left out of headlines, but matter just as much as the positive ones. There was also a ceiling. Benefits kept growing as intake rose, up to about 210 to 225 grams a day, 7 to 7.5 servings, after which eating still more whole grain did not appear to lower risk any further. And critically, not every grain counted the same. Whole grain bread, whole grain breakfast cereals, and added bran were each independently linked to lower risk on their own. Meanwhile, refined grains, white rice, and total rice showed little to no association at all. It really is the whole part that matters, not grains in general. As for the confounding question raised earlier, the one about whether whole grain eaters are just healthier people overall, the researchers checked. The link held up even after accounting for smoking, alcohol, physical activity, body weight, and intake of red meat and sugary drinks. That does not prove cause and effect on its own, since these remain observational studies, not controlled experiments. But the consistency across 45 independent studies on 3 continents, paired with a clear dose-response gradient, is a difficult pattern to wave away as coincidence. So the next time you are standing in that bread aisle, the choice is not really between healthy and unhealthy. Based on the best evidence gathered on this question so far, it is between roughly 3 servings of the real thing and everything else.